Activated, your window into how we can change the way in which we aspire for persons with disabilities, how we change our expectations from seeing inability to expecting ability. Activated takes us on a journey of taking lessons from persons with disabilities in how we must do things differently to unleash the contributions persons with disabilities can and must make to building a disability-inclusive Mzansi. Hello and welcome to Activated with me, your host, Taryn Tomlinson. Job seekers with disabilities with a tertiary qualification have a significantly better chance of benefiting from sustainable work opportunities. Taking the high youth unemployment figures into account, it's critical that youth with disabilities arm themselves with qualifications, skills, and experience that give them a competitive advantage. Enrolment of students with disabilities in TVET colleges and universities, however, remains disappointingly low due to the access and participation challenges in the basic education system. In today's episode, we look at how post-school education paves the way for economic advancement of persons with disabilities. Now, let's get activated. This week, we visit Lesa Bradshaw, who has made it her mission in life to change the disability inclusion narrative in the workplace. We visit Olwethu Sipuka, once a student leader, now a respected academic and dean of students at UNISA. Our guest for today, Abongile Xhantini, reflects on her experiences at school and university and how these experiences influenced her activism work for social justice, as well as exploring economic opportunities. In my final year of high school, I developed severe pains due to rheumatoid arthritis and had to finish my matric via correspondence because the school I attended wasn't accessible. I also continued my tertiary education via correspondence because there were no other services available to me that I was aware of that could facilitate ease of access into tertiary education. Seeing a gap in the market when it came to providing timeous and relevant virtual support to students, Lesa Bradshaw has made it her life's mission to change the disability inclusion narrative. We head to KwaZulu-Natal to meet her. Lesa was born with spinal muscular atrophy and grew up in a small little town outside Durban called Salt Rock on the east coast of South Africa. Her entire philosophy is based on the fact that people with disabilities are most employable.
So I'm the owner of Bradshaw Consulting. I'm a South African woman with a disability, and I'm very passionate about making sure that as our economy grows in South Africa and around the world, that it includes people with disabilities. I think the COVID pandemic presented a unique opportunity for everybody in our society to be disabled by something. It was a great leveler for people to understand that really disability inclusion is about saying, what is disabling me in my studies and in the work environment, and what can I do to remove that disabling factor? So during the pandemic, a lot of what we did was basic problem solving. If our students went home and they weren't able to have access to accessible technology, we were able to use phones and use different technologies and different methods to be able to get assignments delivered. And it became about two key success factors. Firstly, people being accountable for saying, I have a problem and I need to find a way to solve it so that I can deliver on my assignments or get the work done. And the second thing was people being receptive to problem solving and being flexible and learning that there's more than one ways to achieve an end goal. I think that having a degree or a diploma or some form of post-matric qualification is absolutely essential. And I'll tell you why. Because at the moment, with unemployment rates the way that they are, you've got to have every tool in your basket to be able to compete in the economy. And particularly when it comes to people with disabilities, we are in the middle of breaking ground. Each one of us that needs to get employed and that gets employed and does well in employment is paving the way to make it easier for the next person behind us with a disability to enter the economy. So if you have a degree or diploma, if you've got this wealth of knowledge that you can bring to show value to a company, and you put your hand up first, you are actually, and it's indirectly, becoming a change champion that says people with a disability in our economy have got a lot more value to bring than you may think. You are going to be that person that is changing the mindsets around disability and what we can do as a form of diversity. So my argument to youth who are going through schooling is be smarter than anybody else, work harder than anybody else, get that degree or diploma as much as you can. Use whatever skills. If you're not academically strong, everybody's got their own strengths. Tap into what your strength is and know how to leverage that, or know how to be able to bring that to the environment so that you can show potential employers what value you're going to bring. The degree or the diploma will get you that foot in the door, and it's important. But how you use that opportunity once you've got that foot in the door becomes more about character, tenacity, a smile on your face, and really being able to add value. That'll make you succeed and help you with your career growth significantly.
Lesa het 'n broodnodige diens gestig. En ek weet dat ek jare gelede sou voordeel trek uit die ondersteuningsnetwerk. Na die advertentiebreek ontmoet ons Olwethu Sipuka, wat onlangs aangestel is as die dekaan van studentestake by UNISA, en ondersoek saam met hom waarom universiteite meer as net inklusiewe klaskamerspraktyke moet aanbied. Ons is nou weer terug. Welcome back. An Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls alumni, a graduate from Rhodes University, and the founder of Holding Albus. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Abongile Xhantini. Abongile, it's so great to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us. Abongile is a young woman with albinism who has secured a very unique space for herself in the world as a human rights and social and political activist. What shaped you into becoming the phenomenal woman that you are today?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for being called a phenomenal woman. Thank you for the compliment. First of all, I have to say it's living in a suburb and having a family in the rural areas and living these two lives where I saw myself in Saxonwold with white people and just juxtaposing that with black people in rural areas in Eastern Cape, and trying to find out what life is for a body that is white but is racially neutral. And so I think that's where it really started. Since I was 3 years old, when some random lady in the street in the village said, "Oh, shame," walking past me, and I run home and I tell my mom, "Mom, look at that woman, she said, oh, shame to me." You know, almost like I'm really excited that she recognized me. And my mother takes my hand and she sits me down and she says, "Don't you ever allow anybody to ever say shame to you." And I think that's where she planted the seed of self-confidence, of self-awakening, of self-worth, and of the curiosity of mind, and understanding social, political situations. And I think that for me was a huge foundation.
In terms of academia, do you believe that there's enough being done to prepare our children with disabilities, and girls in particular, for post-school education as a road towards economic advancement?
The fact that we're having this conversation is indicative of the fact that it's not enough. You know, there are special schools, and I think that's highly disrespectful to people who just have a different reality of life. They're already being othered before they even step into the world. So you start believing that the world for you works differently, and of course you don't fit in mainstream society because you didn't fit in since you were a kid. And I think that's where we fail.
What could we do better as parents, teachers, leaders of institutions, and of course government as a whole, in ensuring that young people with disabilities aspire for more and also expect more for themselves?
When you're a parent, it also depends the parent of who. Are you a parent of person with an impairment, or are you a parent of a person who goes to a non-specialized school? It is how you talk to your children, how you make them see the world as equal, as mainstream, and that is diversity. That is the true essence of life. That is true Ubuntu. That is the Rainbow Nation. It's not just about skin tone or color or race. It's about everything. Are we diverse in all our facets in society? And government itself needs to really take the lead here. We must remember that government are also just people who've moved up to the top of the rank where they get to govern the whole society. But they also don't know how to govern differently and how to govern in a unified way. But there are some countries who have done it really well, and that's where we should take best practices from.
Is there any parting words you would like to leave, maybe a young viewer at home right now with a disability who would love to step into the role of becoming an activist but is afraid of doing so? What words of encouragement could you leave with them?
That person shouldn't label themselves as a person with a disability. Primary, just first. It's about consciously knowing what the worth of words is. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you say you are disabled, you're really telling somebody this is all you are. Mm-hmm. And so choosing the words in which that identify you is incredible. Mm-hmm. And I think every single child who is at home, who's been made to feel different, or who has been othered, or families that have been judged or have been pushed away, or people have refused to take you to school, don't just walk away. Stay to your ground and say it. And continue to say it, because and then continue to follow it up with action, because I think that's what progress is, and that's what activism is. It is doing, it's being active and actively conscious of the barriers and always working with them to make them diverse and accessible and freeing and contributing to a true human bodied and whole life.
Thank you for coming and joining us and chatting with us today, and for your valuable input. It's been absolutely fantastic to speak with you.
Thanks, Taryn. This has been so much fun.
Olwethu Sipuka, recently appointed as Dean for Student Affairs at UNISA, was one of the first alumni with disabilities of the YALI program. He subsequently became the chief of Party for YALI in Southern Africa. Let's meet him. Sipuka grew up in a family of 5, having said that having a mother who was a teacher meant education and books was central to his upbringing, but so were cricket and church. His mission in life to advance social transformation and dignity for the most marginalized in society and the economy. His idea is to change that narrative.
I joined the university about 4 years ago. And when I joined the university, I was serving as the director for the Advocacy and Resource Center for Students with Disabilities. And that entailed ensuring that all students who register with UNISA, who have got different kinds of impairments or disabilities, are assisted from applications all the way to graduations. You would know, for instance, that if a student has got a visual impairment, be it partially blind, blind completely, they might require some form of special assistance in terms of their reading materials, in terms of how they write their exams, how you convert the study material into particular formats. And so I was largely responsible for setting up the policy in the university. I think one of the first things we did was to have what we call multi-purpose computer labs across our regions in South Africa. You would know that UNISA is an ODEL university, namely that we do our training purely through e-communications and your study materials that we send, so nobody really comes to class every day, but you study on your own. So one of the things we've picked up is that students with disabilities are not having access to the kind of computers or devices that are best suited to assist them in their individual disabilities. And so we worked with the Department of Higher Education and Training, got some resources, deployed those resources across the country, and are giving students with disabilities 24/7 access to those devices that are specifically modeled to assist them and their disabilities.
After the break, we meet Mpho Tjope, who founded Albinism Advocacy for Access, an advocacy group to educate communities to help protect individuals with albinism. Welcome back. Vic Mckinney was an active 19-year-old fine arts student at Michaela's when a road accident left him paralyzed from the neck down, robbing him of his dad, who was like a best friend to him. Despite this, he has used these challenges to rebuild his life, find happiness, and advocate disability rights. In ons bulletin wys Vic Mckinney vir ons hoe inligtings- en kommunikasiestegnologie nuwe maniere van leer en werk moontlik gemaak het.
So the way I use my laptop is with a special device. I have a device called a Smart Nav, which I think stands for Smart Navigation. And essentially, it works as a little sort of infrared camera that picks up movement. It sits on top of the laptop, and then it picks up the movement of like a silver reflective dot, which I have in the middle of my glasses between my eyes. So a mouse basically does two things. It moves for you and it clicks. So movement-wise, the little camera on top of my laptop picks up the movement of this dot as I move my head. The mouse moves, so it's left, right, up, down, etc. And then part of that, on the screen, there's a little, it's called a dual clicker, and it's a menu to do all the mouse activations. And then to type on the screen, I have an on-screen keyboard. And as I type a letter, it also has word prediction for about 7 or 8 words. And now you have voice recognition stuff on everyday phones, and you can talk to Siri or Google or whatever. So we've come a long way.
As ons dink dat ons het uitdagings, is Vic 'n bewys dat enige iets moontlik is. From a small town in the Northern Cape, the only child with albinism in his family and whole community, Mpho Tjope has had his fair share of challenges. He had to overcome and build a strong mental attitude to become the founder of Albinism for Access Foundation. Mpho Tjope is an author, speaker, founder, and managing director of Albinism Advocacy for Access, an NGO focused on giving children, youth, and mothers of children with albinism access to health, education, and economic opportunities to ensure that albinism is not excluded from opportunities.
The I Can Be campaign is actually we're taking professionals with albinism, like your lawyers, your doctors, your engineers, all with albinism. So we take 10, and then we take 50 learners with albinism, and we bring them in one space, and we try to speak. I am against this idea of people bringing programs to persons with disabilities without inquiring about what do they think is needed. So what would happen is that we'd ask the learners, what is it? What are the challenges right now? And you as the learners come up with the solutions to these challenges. What informed this movement or this campaign was that there were a high number of learners with albinism dropping out of school. There were high numbers of learners trying to commit suicide. And this is basically because there was no support. At times they were teased. There were challenges of getting glasses and they couldn't see properly. There were teachers who were not understanding albinism. So we had to, or I had to form something that will actually curb that. The first impact that we saw from the program was self-confidence and self-belief, that learners, when they come out, they said, you know what, I want to be this, I want to be that, I want to achieve more. So that is the self-belief that was hidden and the resolve that I'm going to finish school. Persons with albinism and persons with disabilities as a whole, we need to understand that we are important, and people would always have different views, different perceptions, different sayings about you. But what is important is what do you say about you? What is important is what do you believe about yourself? Because sometimes, and in most cases, it is what separates you from being successful and not ever achieving. It is not your abilities, but sometimes it is what you believe in. And I would say parents need to love their kids, regardless, even if without disability, with disability. This love seeps through in most cases when they grow up.
Mpho is vasbeslote dat mense met of sonder gestremdhede nie moet toelaat dat hul omstandighede in die pad staan van hul drome nie. We've come to the end of yet another episode of Activated, but before we go, we leave you with the sounds of Alistair Dickerson, a marimba player who has cerebral palsy. Alistair founded Xtreme Marimba and can be found playing at all types of events. And when he's not entertaining the crowd, he is teaching marimba at schools. Enjoy. And remember to join us again next week, same time, same place, only on SABC2. You belong.